Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about adrenal insufficiency and Achilles tendinopathy. These two conditions that are really serious, and the Achilles tendinopathy is excruciating, can be caused by other drugs that your doctor has prescribed for you. If you find that interesting and would like to know more, then stick around. About 12 years ago, I started feeling poorly. All my muscles and my joints ached all at the same time, and I didn't know what on earth was going on. So I went to my GP and he referred me to a rheumatologist. Whereupon, having been to the rheumatologist, he decided that he would put me on prednisolone, because if the prednisolone worked, then I would be diagnosed with polymyalgia, and if it didn't work, then I would be diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I went away, I got my prescription, and I started taking this high dose of prednisolone. And true to form, it did work. I did stop feeling so achy, I did have more energy, things were good. But rapidly, things became not so good, and I started to feel very hot. I had bouts of profuse sweating where it would just pour out of my body, this perspiration. It was just awful. It was worse than the menopause. Also, it made me feel thoroughly miserable mentally. I felt angry, and I'm not an angry person. So that was totally not me. And I just thought, I really don't want to be on these drugs. And I was told, in order to come off them, you have to wean yourself off them about 0.5 milligram at a time over a number of, about once a week, just reduce it 0.5 milligram. But if the pain starts coming back, then you have to put it back up again. So I did this over the next few months. I'd wean myself down, I'd have to put it up a little bit again, I'd wean myself down, then it might be better, so I'd wean myself down again the following week. Maybe I'd have to put it up again. It went on like that for months. And eventually I was down to 2.5 milligrams, and I could wean myself off those, which I did. And rapidly, the weight that I put on, 2.5 stones, rapidly fell off. So that was fine. But I gradually noticed that all of my energy would be gone by about 10 a.m. Everything after that would be such a gargantuan effort that I just didn't recognize myself. Most of the day, if I weren't working, then I would have to sit on the sofa with my feet up and do absolutely nothing. And I can tell you, if you are like me and you like to be busy and you like pottering, then just sitting on a sofa is like some kind of water torture. It drives you nuts. So this went on with me going back and forward to the doctor and saying, what is wrong with me? Why am I feeling so exhausted? For about 2 years. And it was just getting worse. So by the time my daughter was due to have her first child, and I was going to do her work for her while she was on maternity leave, things had got pretty ropey. I was finding it difficult to climb up the stairs. It was a real big effort. One day when I was at the surgery, I was just sitting there working on a patient, and suddenly I felt as if my energy had been pulled, just switched off, gone. And I turned around to my daughter's assistant and I said, my energy's gone. It's just gone. I said, I think I can finish the morning because I'll just sit here, but I won't be able to get up, which it does sound ridiculous. And even as I'm saying it now, I think, good Lord. But that's what it was. My car was parked about 12 feet from the back door of the surgery, and I honestly wondered how I was going to get there, to get inside it and go home. When I turned around to Elaine, she looked at me and she said, do you know, it looks like you've had a stroke on both sides of your face. It was just drooping. And so the end of the morning came. I very gingerly got out of the chair. I shuffled to my car. It took the most gargantuan effort to get into that car, and I sat there, and even the effort of driving was difficult. Once I got home, because my darling boy and I follow each other on Find My Friends, because I lost my memory 2 or 3 times, he knew that I was sitting outside our house on the driveway and I hadn't got out of the car. So he came out to find out what I was doing. And I said, I don't think I can get out of the car. So he got me out, he walked me inside, and he sat me down on the sofa, put the feet up, and I fell asleep for 5 hours straight. He didn't wake me because he figured that I must be tired, and clearly I was. By the time I woke up, it was nearly 6 p.m. I said, can you take me upstairs? Can you help me get upstairs so that I can go to bed? So he got me upstairs, he helped me undress, and he put me to bed. And at 6:30, the endocrinologist that I had phoned that day earlier phoned me back, and she said, you must come in tomorrow to the hospital and I will see you. My darling boy sat with me until I fell asleep, but whilst I was lying there, I said, I think I'm going to die tonight. Now, I'm not one to make a fuss. I don't say things like that. I've never said anything like that before. But I had such a feeling of impending doom. I can't explain it any other way than that. Every single muscle in my body, all the little muscles in between my fingers and my toes, all hurt individually and all at the same time. It was the most strangest of feelings. And I really did think that night I was going to die. Clearly I didn't. But I did panic. The next day, we went to the hospital. I was given a lot of blood tests, after which I went to see the consultant, and she said she would give me a vitamin D injection and a vitamin B12 injection because I was deficient in both. And also, I needed to take hydrocortisone. Now, I had spent months and months and months weaning myself off steroids because I just didn't want to be on them. But she said I needed this hydrocortisone, so I thought, well, as soon as I don't need it, I'm coming off it. I started taking the hydrocortisone, and I got this injection for B12 and vitamin D, and she said, you will feel better in 3 days, and believe me, I did. I did actually feel better. But it only lasted 2 weeks, and then I went right downhill again. This carried on, me going back for more injections, going away for a couple of weeks, me going back, and so on and so forth, until we were about to go to Australia on a holiday, on a cruise as it was. And I was back to square one, barely able to walk and feeling very poorly. I went to see the endocrinologist again, and she said to my husband, your wife is very poorly. she really needs to be in hospital. But I didn't want to go into hospital because I felt that they would just poke and prod me and I wouldn't get anywhere. So I didn't go. But she gave me more injections, and thereafter I decided that I would get my own B12 injections from a supplier and do it myself, because you can do it yourself and you can get it. Thereafter I was giving myself B12 injections, which I at the time got from the b12deficiency.org website. They don't supply it now. That did make me a lot better, but by that time I had already started to wean myself off the hydrocortisone. Gradually, I started to become unwell. Lo and behold, what I didn't appreciate and what nobody told me, not a soul, is that sometimes if you are put on prednisolone, which is an extremely strong steroid, then that stops your adrenal glands from working. When you reduce it slowly, your adrenal glands are meant to kick into gear again and start working. But some people, their adrenal glands don't. They just say, no, I'm not doing that. And they don't work properly. And if your adrenal glands aren't working properly, goodness knows you are in trouble. Not knowing this, I weaned myself off the hydrocortisone and gradually became more and more poorly. My symptoms were lacking salt, so I craved salt. I would pour it into my hand and I would lick it. I craved salty foods. I drank water like it was going out of fashion, and believe me, I don't drink water normally. I prefer my water boiled with a tea bag and some milk. But during that time, I was drinking bottle after bottle of water. At one point, I thought I must have diabetes, but I didn't. My blood sugars were fine. And no energy, gone by 10 a.m. in the morning. And it just didn't come back until the next day, and then I'd have a little bit, and then it would be gone by 10. And then I would go really pale. I got in touch with the doctor, the late Dr. Chandy of the B12 deficiency organization. And he was such a kind soul. He spoke to me on the phone for an hour and a half. He got me to have 4 blood tests privately and another test to find out about my cortisone levels, which was spitting in a little phial 4 times a day. I went to the lab and I had these other blood tests done, hormone tests, and one for DHEA and 2 others. It turned out that I didn't have even a trace of DHEA, not a trace at all, and that is a hormone in your body that supports your adrenal glands. So you do actually need that. I didn't have any. And the other 2 were a little bit off, and the spittle test showed that my cortisol ran out, surprise, surprise, by about 10. He got the results back and he said, you need to take hydrocortisone. And I thought, oh no. And he said, it's not like taking prednisolone. It will just replace what you should have in your body if you were normal. So it's not going to make you put on weight. It's not going to do any of that. I said, okay, well, I've got some because obviously I had, and I hadn't been taking it. And that was a Sunday I was speaking to him, and I went downstairs and I took 10 milligrams. By the afternoon, I was doing my washing, ironing, putting it all away. I was just like a woman possessed. I couldn't believe it. Was so joyous to have some energy. I just did everything. What nobody told me, and this is a little bit crucial, is that I had a condition called adrenal insufficiency. Now, if you have that, it means that you don't make enough cortisol. and that's a hormone, and it is pretty important for all the organs in your body. If you don't have it, you can go into an adrenal crisis, which means your organs can start shutting down and you can end up in a coma. But nobody told me that, and I didn't even think anything of it. So although I was prescribed these hydrocortisone tablets, I didn't realise that it was actually important that I took them at the right time. I didn't miss a day or two, all that sort of thing. I wasn't really thinking that it was anything serious. I didn't always take all my tablets at the right time, or sometimes didn't take them at all. On those days, if it was 2 or 3 days, I would start getting the craving of salt back and the drinking and the dizziness and the falling around bit. I didn't realise what was going on. And that was carrying on until COVID came. I got extremely stressed. I was worried that my boy would get COVID and die. I just didn't want that to happen. So I was extremely stressed. My symptoms got way worse. I just felt so ill. And I don't know how, but I was searching on the web and I saw this thing about adrenal insufficiency and all the symptoms, being on hydrocortisone and so on, and sick day rules. And I thought, what's all this? Apparently, if you have adrenal insufficiency, then if you are stressed, like worrying about COVID, a worldwide pandemic, then you need to double your hydrocortisone dose. Now, this was from the girl who was haphazardly taking hers. So I did. And I did, funnily enough, start feeling a lot better, albeit my hair started falling out all over my arms and it got exceptionally thin. I mean, super thin. I had to wear a topper or a wig because it was so thin. Fast forward to about 2 years ago, when randomly I got a phone call from our GP. This person was a locum and she was just doing a check on the people with adrenal insufficiency. And she said, "Have you ever had it explained to you?" And I said, "No." She said, "Do you have an emergency injection kit?" And I said, "No." And she went on in this vein, and I thought, oh. And she said, "When did you last see your endocrinologist?" And I said, "Quite a few years ago." She said, "Well, we'll be in touch." In fact, she was never in touch. I had to ask my GP for an emergency kit. Well, they gave me the prescription and I had to buy the emergency kit that I now keep in my car, well, in both cars, just in case there is an accident and I'm taken to hospital, whereupon I will need a big injection of cortisone. I mean, all these things, nobody had told me. I wouldn't have been messing around with my dose had I have known that it was a little bit important. But people don't give you enough information. They could have sat me down and said to me, "Imogen, you will be on these steroids for the rest of your life. If you have your teeth out, if you go to the doctors and you have an operation, anything like that. If you're sick, if you're vomiting, then you must increase your dose to double according to sick day rules." It's a serious condition. You need to be told about it, but when they don't give you any information at all, then you are ignorant. I do take it seriously. I do take my tablets every day. So that is one thing that has been caused by another thing that was prescribed for me. The other thing is, in October 23, I noticed that I had a pain in my Achilles tendon on my right side. And gradually, it also came on my left Achilles tendon. It's not as if I'm a runner. I'm not a sports person. I was doing walking, but not masses. So I didn't know what was causing it, and it was miserable. Every time I went to see the doctor, I'd say, I've got Achilles tendinopathy. And he'd say, ouch, ouch, which was no help at all. I had tried all sorts of things, anti-inflammatories, you know, the sort of thing, and I would be taking paracetamol every time I went to bed because the pain would come and wake me up at about 1 a.m. And it was every time I sat down and let my foot relax, then the pain would be just there, just nagging at me the whole time. It was awful. This went on for over a year, by which time I'd had all that pain. I didn't know what it was, and, well, I did know what it was, but what I could do about it. I was doing exercises, I was doing stretches, everything that you can see on YouTube to do for an Achilles tendon problem, I was doing, believe me. Didn't make any difference. Eventually, I went to see somebody privately who put their Doppler on my Achilles tendons and found that I had such a severe case of Achilles tendinopathy that he had never seen two tendons so enlarged and full of blood vessels and nerves, and you shouldn't have those in your tendons. I ended up having 2 rounds of high volume injections, and that is, it contains a tiny bit of steroid and a whole lot of water, about 20 mils, injected in the space between my tendon and my fascia, thus splitting it and breaking the blood vessels and nerve endings. And gradually it recovered. Now I can still sort of feel it and niggly a bit, but absolutely nothing like it used to be. Then one day, my friend Sarah, her partner is a doctor, and he said, "Is Imogen taking statins?" And she asked me, and I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "You need to stop them. They can cause Achilles tendons to be a problem and in some cases rupture." When I think back, it was around the same time the year before when I started these statins that this problem began. And I just wonder why doctors don't think of, instead of saying ouch, looking at my other drugs to see if there is a problem with them that could be causing the tendinopathy. And I've looked at it online, and yes, it is a well-known thing. There are a couple of, well, about 3 or 4 things that can cause Achilles tendinopathy. So if you have problems in your Achilles, in your ankles, and it's miserable and it won't go away, I urge you to look at all of your medications and ask Google, Dr. Google, if any of those medications cause Achilles tendinopathy, because chances are you're on one of them if you've got it. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.